Imagine for a moment that you're sleeping in your bed, snug and safe, when suddenly you hear wild roars outside your house. But it's not a dog barking or a cat fighting. It's a giant lion the size of a horse, with fangs like daggers, prowling right outside your door. And you have no concrete walls to protect you. All you have is a dying fire and a wooden spear. That's what life was like for our ancestors 100,000 years ago. There were no cities, no police, and no hospitals. Just the wildest and most dangerous nature you can imagine. And in that nature, there were predators that would make any horror movie look like a children's show. But here we are, right? We survived. Our ancestors not only managed to survive in a world filled with killer beasts, but they also learned to dominate that world. This is the story of how the bravest humans in history confronted the planet's most fearsome predators and triumphed. Thirsty Mangtwak, the prehistoric world, was like a Jurassic Park, real and even more dangerous. The predators of that era were giant, super-aggressive versions of the animals we know today. Picture lions that weighed 660 pounds, bears that stood 10 feet tall on 2 legs, and wolves the size of a pony. The Smilodon, or saber-toothed cat, was probably the most terrifying predator. Its fangs measured 7 inches long, longer than a kitchen knife. It could take down a mammoth with those teeth, so a human was like an appetizer to it. And they didn't hunt alone, they hunted in packs, like today's lions, but much larger and fiercer. Cave bears were absolute monsters. They weighed up to 100 pounds and had claws like knives. Their strength was so brutal they could break a mammoth's bones with one swipe. To make matters worse, they also lived in caves, exactly where humans sought refuge. But it wasn't just land predators. The skies were dangerous too. There were giant eagles that could lift a human child into the air. And in the waters there were prehistoric crocodiles that made modern ones look like lizards. Prehistoric wolves were particularly terrifying because they hunted in packs of up to 30 individuals. They were smarter than modern wolves, larger, and had jaws that could easily crush bones. A pack of these wolves could surround a group of humans and attack from all angles. For our ancestors, every day was literally a fight for survival. Going out to gather food meant risking one's life. Sleeping meant becoming easy prey. Even using the bathroom could be a death sentence if you strayed too far from the group. If this story sends shivers down your spine, imagine how our ancestors felt. Like and subscribe for more incredible stories about human survival. Our ancestors weren't fools. They quickly realized that to survive in a world full of predators, they needed smart strategies. They developed some of the most ingenious survival tactics in history. The first lesson they learned was that strength lies in numbers. While a single human was easy prey, a group of 20 or 30 humans was a real threat, even to the biggest predators. They formed clans where each member had a specific role in defending the group. They developed a system of shifts for sleeping. Never ever did everyone sleep at the same time. There was always someone awake, watching, listening for any strange sound. That's where the saying, "sleep with one eye open," comes from. Literally, they had to do it to avoid waking up dead. Fire was their #1 secret weapon. Every predator, without exception, feared fire. Our ancestors not only learned to make fire, but they also became experts at keeping it going all night. They would create rings of fire around their camps, forming barriers that no predator dared to cross. They also became masters of camouflage and concealment. They learned to move silently, cover their scent with mud and plants, and hide in places where predators couldn't find them. They knew every rock, every tree, and every cave in their territory. They developed super-advanced communication systems. They had different calls and signals to warn about different types of danger. One call meant saber-toothed tiger sighted, while another meant wolf pack approaching. Everyone in the group knew exactly what to do when they heard each signal, but the smartest thing was how they learned to use the terrain to their advantage. They knew escape routes, high places where predators couldn't reach, and safe shelters where they could hide. They turned their knowledge of the land into their biggest advantage. Can you imagine living like that? Always alert, always in danger. Share this video if you believe our ancestors were true warriors. Our survival was not just about hiding and hoping for the best. Our ancestors had to become exceptional hunters and fighters. They developed weapons and combat techniques that enabled them to face beasts 10 times larger and stronger than they were. The first weapons were simple but effective: spears with sharp stone tips, heavy clubs, and stones that could be thrown with deadly precision. But the real magic was in how they used them. They developed group hunting techniques that turned a group of humans into a coordinated killing machine. To hunt a saber-toothed tiger, they needed military strategy. Some members of the group acted as decoys, luring the predator into a trap. Others hid in strategic positions, ready to attack from the flanks, and the most skilled waited for the perfect moment to deliver the killing blow. They invented incredibly sophisticated traps, deep pits covered with branches and leaves where predators would fall and be unable to escape, traps with sharp stakes that would activate when an animal stepped in the wrong place, and snares that could catch the legs of the largest predators. They also learned to use fire as a weapon, not just to scare off predators, but to attack them directly. They made torches that could be thrown and created fire barriers to guide animals into traps. Some groups even learned to make arrows with flaming tips. But perhaps the most impressive aspect was how they learned to understand their enemies. They studied the behavior of each predator, noting their strengths, weaknesses, and hunting patterns. They knew that saber-toothed cats attacked by surprise, that cave bears were more aggressive when defending their young, and that wolves were most dangerous at dawn. With this knowledge, they could predict attacks and prepare accordingly. They knew when it was safe to go hunting, when to stay in their shelter, and how to move through the territory without drawing the attention of predators. Do you think you would have the courage and smarts to face a saber-toothed cat armed with just a spear? Let me know in the comments what you would do in that situation. Despite all their efforts, our ancestors couldn't always avoid direct encounters with predators. When this happened, it turned into epic battles between human intelligence and the sheer force of nature. One of the most well-documented battles by archaeologists took place in a cave in Spain about 40,000 years ago. The remains they found tell the story of a group of humans that sought refuge in a cave, unaware that it was already inhabited by a family of cave bears. The battle lasted for days, and although several humans lost their lives, they eventually managed to drive the bears out and reclaim the cave. In France, evidence of a confrontation between a group of hunters and a pack of cave lions was discovered. The bones showed signs of injuries on both humans and lions, but the most striking detail was that the humans not only survived, but managed to kill several of the lions. They used group tactics, encircling the lions and attacking from multiple angles, but not all battles ended well for humans. In South Africa, scientists found remains of a child who had clearly fallen victim to a giant eagle attack. The marks on the skull perfectly matched the eagle's talons, and the bones were scattered as if the child had been carried to the bird's nest. There is also evidence of nighttime attacks by wolf packs. At some ancient camps, human bones were found mixed with wolf bones, suggesting desperate battles in the dark. Some groups managed to fend off the attacks using fire and forming defensive circles, but others were not so lucky. What impresses scientists most is how humans learned from each battle. Every attack they survived became a lesson for the entire community. They developed new tactics, improved their weapons, and refined their defense strategies. Some groups even began to proactively attack predators. Instead of waiting to be attacked, they went out hunting saber-toothed cats and cave bears. It was incredibly dangerous, but also very effective. By removing the most dangerous predators from their territory, they made the entire area safer for their tribe. What do you think of this strategy? Do you believe it was better to attack first or to wait and defend? It's a question we continue to debate even today. But our ancestors didn't just fight predators during the day. Nights were especially terrifying. In the dark, predators had all the advantages: better night vision, superior hearing, and they knew the terrain just as well as the humans did. At night, camps turned into fortresses. They lit fire circles that burned from sunset until sunrise. These circles not only kept predators at bay, but also allowed humans to see anything approaching. They developed sophisticated nighttime watch systems. They divided the night into shifts, with each shift assigned specific responsibilities. Some watched the forest, others kept an eye on the mountains, and some monitored the water paths where animals came to drink. They created secret codes to communicate silently, avoiding sounds that could attract predators. They also learned to use the natural features of the terrain for their protection. They camped in elevated areas from which they could spot predators, near cliffs that animals couldn't scale, or on small islands in the middle of rivers that predators were unwilling to cross. But the most clever strategy was how they learned to use the sounds of the night to their advantage. They knew every natural sound in the forest, so they could instantly tell when something was out of place. The sudden silence of crickets could mean a predator was lurking. The nervous flight of bats could warn of nearby danger. They crafted special tools for nighttime survival, torches that they could ignite quickly, weapons that could be used in darkness, and signals they could send to other groups without making noise. They even developed techniques for moving silently in the dark, which could save their lives if they needed to escape during the night. Children learned from a very young age to sleep lightly and to wake at the first sign of danger. Mothers developed ways to keep babies quiet at night, using techniques to prevent cries from attracting predators. It was a survival education that began at birth. Can you imagine not being able to sleep peacefully for a single night in your life? Share this video if you believe that our ancestors had incredible courage. Prehistoric. Despite all the danger and violence, something extraordinary happened. Our ancestors developed a deep understanding and respect for the predators that threatened them. This complex relationship between humans and predators shaped our earliest religions, art, and ways of understanding the world. In the caves where they lived, our ancestors painted detailed images of the predators they faced. But these were not just drawings of fear. They were portraits that showed admiration for the strength, speed, and intelligence of these animals. Many groups adopted these predators as spiritual totems, believing they could obtain their powers through special rituals. They developed ceremonies before hunts that honored both the prey and the predators. They believed that killing an animal, especially a powerful predator, required respect and gratitude. These ceremonies not only prepared them mentally for the hunt, but also strengthened group bonds and gave them courage to face mortal dangers. Some groups even began to imitate the predators they admired the most. They adopted the hunting techniques of wolves, the patience of saber-toothed cats, and the cooperation of lions. They realized that predators were not just enemies, but also teachers who could show them how to survive better. Clothing and ornaments also reflected this complex relationship. Wearing the skins of the most dangerous predators not only provided protection, but also showcased the courage and skill of the hunter. Saber-toothed cat fangs became necklaces symbolizing power and bravery. Stories and legends about battles with predators were passed down from generation to generation. These tales not only entertained, but also educated. Children learned survival techniques, the weaknesses of each predator, and the importance of cooperation through these narratives that mixed real events with mythical elements. But perhaps most importantly, these encounters with predators shaped the human mindset. They taught us that we could face any threat if we worked together, that intelligence could overcome brute strength, and that respecting nature was essential for survival. Do you think we have lost something significant from the deep relationship our ancestors had with nature? What could we learn from them today? After thousands of years of struggle, something incredible began to happen. Humans not only learned to survive among predators, but also started to dominate the environment that had once terrified them. This shift marked the beginning of our supremacy as a species. The turning point came when humans developed truly effective long-range weapons. The bow and arrow changed everything. Now they could kill a predator from a safe distance, without facing it head-on. This provided them with a tremendous advantage they had never had before. They also improved their group hunting techniques, turning them into true military operations. They developed combat formations, flanking strategies and siege techniques that could defeat any predator no matter how large or fierce. Humans had become the most lethal predators on the planet. But the real revolution came when they began to domesticate some of the smaller predators. Wolves were the first to be domesticated, becoming dogs that hunted alongside humans. Suddenly, humans had allies with super senses that could detect predators long before they could. Over time, major predators began to avoid humans. Saber-toothed cats, cave bears, and giant lions learned that attacking a group of humans was extremely dangerous. Humans had earned the respect of nature through their intelligence and determination. Many of the most dangerous predators began to go extinct. Some scientists believe this was due to climate changes, while others attribute it to the pressure of human hunting. It was likely a combination of both factors. Humans had learned to exploit the weaknesses of these animals so effectively that many could not survive. This dominance over predators allowed humans to expand into new territories that had previously been too dangerous. They could establish permanent settlements, develop agriculture, and create the first civilizations. The constant fear of predators no longer controlled every aspect of their lives. Can you realize how incredible this transformation was, from terrified prey to dominant predators in just a few thousand years? Like if you think this story is fascinating. When we look back at this extraordinary time, we realize that our ancestors left us lessons that remain relevant today. The way they confronted the most dangerous predators in history teaches us about courage, intelligence, and the importance of working together. The first lesson is that no matter how great the threat, there is always a way to face it. Our ancestors did not give up against predators that were much bigger and stronger than they were. They used their intelligence, creativity, and ability to cooperate to find solutions that worked. The second lesson is about the importance of preparation. Our ancestors did not wait to be attacked to think about how to defend themselves. They developed strategies, trained constantly, and kept their tools ready for use. Survival requires always being prepared. The third lesson is about the power of knowledge. The more they knew about their enemies, the better they could defend themselves against them. They studied each predator, learned their patterns, and used that knowledge to gain strategic advantages. In modern life, knowledge remains one of our greatest weapons. They also taught us that unity is strength. No individual human could have survived on their own in that environment. It was only by working together, sharing resources and knowledge, that they could face threats that surpassed them individually. Their respect for nature is also an important lesson. While they fought against predators, they never lost respect for the power and significance of nature. They understood that they were part of a larger ecosystem and that their survival depended on maintaining a certain balance. Finally, they taught us that fear can be both an enemy and an ally. Fear kept them alert and alive, but they did not allow it to paralyze them. They learned to use fear as a tool to stay focused and prepared without letting it control their lives. These lessons remain relevant to us today. While we no longer face saber-toothed cats, we still encounter challenges that require courage, intelligence, and cooperation. The principles our ancestors used to survive can help us address modern challenges. And so, brothers and sisters, when our ancestors slept with one eye open and faced the most dangerous predators in history, they were not just fighting to survive. They were forging the character and mentality that would define us as a species forever. Every night that our ancestors stood watch against saber-toothed tigers, every battle they fought against cave bears, and every strategy they devised to confront predators contributed to making us who we are today. They taught us that humans are stronger when we work together, smarter when we learn from our adversaries, and braver when we face the impossible. The next time you encounter a challenge that seems too great, remember your ancestors. They faced the most terrifying beasts on the planet, armed only with wooden spears and fire. And not only did they survive, but they thrived. If they could master the deadliest predators in history, we can face any challenge that comes our way. This story reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Our ancestors were afraid, but they did not allow that fear to control them. They used their intelligence, their determination, and their ability to work together to turn fear into a survival tool. When the world was wild and dangerous, when every day was a battle for survival, our ancestors did not just survive. They adapted, evolved, and ultimately mastered their environment. And that is the true legacy they left us. Proof that no threat is too great when humans work together with intelligence and determination.